Well, welcome to everyone here for our last public meeting of the school board here on June 13th, 2023. Welcome. Come on in. Come on in. Make yourself at home. Just find a wall to stand against and prop it up. Welcome here.
They could put that trophy right here.
Yeah, put it right in the center. So I'd like to just call to order this public meeting. And also I'd like to acknowledge that the Abbotsford School District is located on the land that we all live, work, and play in, along with the Stolo peoples, the Sumac First Nation, and the Matsqui First Nation. As tradition of our public board meetings, we usually stand and sing heartily the O Canada and we face the flag. So can you join us, please? Asia Sumac students for that wonderful rendition. I used to say that it was the trustees that did that and we taped them, but nobody would believe that, so I can't say that anymore. So adoption of the agenda, I need a mover and a seconder, please. So we got White, and Trustee White and Trustee Wilson. We do electronic voting, so you can see that on the screens. Seven all in favor. So 5.1 is minutes of the public board meeting held May 9th.
Move to approve.
That's Trustee Peterson, Trustee Kandarajwan. We'll just take care of a bit of business and then we'll get on to the delegations. Stan, I think you still got to vote. That's all right. We all get, once people are in the room, it's a little bit different. We have a long list of consent items, 6.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in one motion. First and seconder, please. Mover and a seconder. Trustee Rai. Trustee Kandarajwan. Thank you. It's coming. They're out there somewhere and they're going to come here shortly. That's how it kind of works. And acknowledgement. We got them all? I don't see them here. Okay, here we go. We also want to acknowledge different holidays and things that the world is acknowledging. So month of June is National Indigenous History Month. It's also Pride Month. And then June 1st is Instructional Support Staff Appreciation Day. We can never appreciate our staff enough, so we want to thank all of our support staff. What is not on here, which I'd like to mention, is June 6th, 1944 was D-Day. And it's our 79th anniversary. Just thought with all the young men and families that lost loved ones during that time, it'd be good for us to remember that. June 18th is Father's Day. And then we have June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day. And then June 27th is Canadian Multiculturalism Day. That's a good word for a ESL person or ELL person to read. What we want to do now is just have some of our delegations. And so the first delegation I would pass over to our Superintendent Godden. to introduce.
Well, thank you. And as you know, Abbotsford has had a long, rich tradition of our performance in skills competition. And earlier this year, we had two of our finest represented our school district at the national skills competition. Wyatt Rempel from Asia Sumas in automotive, and Gabriella Neufeld from Yale Secondary in electrical wiring. Wyatt couldn't make it tonight, but Gabriella, thank you for coming tonight. And we always like to honor students who go to national skills competition because we know just how much effort and energy and skill it requires. And so we're delighted to welcome you here to tell us a little bit about the experience. And so I don't know if Mr. Pearson, you want to do an introduction or just let...
I'll give her just a little bit of a start.
You'll have to come up to the...
And you gotta press that button.
Okay, thank you for having us. Regional, most people, not everyone comes to the regionals, but all of us here, we're at the provincials. You saw the size of that event. Gold medalist in both events for both individuals, which qualified them to go to the nationals, and that's the show. That's the provincials that you see at Trade X times 10. Quite a nice event. Lots of, all the provinces and territories there. 500 competitors, 55 areas of competition. But I know for Gabby, it was 2 days in a cubicle doing a massive layout. And I'll pass it to her. She was also interviewed for on it was Global TV?
CBC,
CBC. So she was nationally represented during that interview. So I'll pass it to Gabby.
Thank you.
Welcome here.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess my experience. Okay. That was intense, I guess. Started with, I guess, provincial or regionals and then provincials. Won provincials, as you said. Nationals is about like 10 times more intense than provincials, not necessarily in like a bad way, but that was really interesting. Like everyone was really passionate about what they were doing. They're all really excited. Like obviously everyone was really nervous, including myself, but no, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of people there to like support you, which was really nice, and they were all talking about like, even if you don't win, like you still got there, which is like a huge feat in its own. So yeah, they really did their best to make you not feel like down on yourself for not winning in nationals. So yeah, I don't know. It was really cool.
I'm interested, Gabriella, what was the task you were given at nationals that you had to compete in?
For electrical, we were given a small cubicle with like 3 walls, a set amount of materials, and then they had a little blueprint layout and a description of all the circuits that we had to do. And then for the criteria, they mark neatness and like your boxing layout, pipe work, code, and then functionality.
Wow.
Yeah.
So any comments or questions from Trustee Wilson?
Thank you, Chair Neufeld. Gabby, go girl power. I just got to say, I'm really, really excited for you, and congratulations. It's quite an accomplishment, and good luck with your future, because I'm pretty sure you'll be in very high demand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Trustee Peterson.
Gabrielle, I had the great pleasure being at the provincials and seeing you in that corner. And as I talk to you here, you are way ahead of everybody at one point.
Yeah.
I have no idea how you do those things. But I could have used you. I had to install a plug for my my microwave the other day, and I thought I was going to die. I did get it done. It only took me 3 or 4 days. So it is impressive what you did in such a short time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Trustee Rowe.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gabrielle. I just think you're so inspiring, to a lot of women who want to get into the trades. And as a father of 4 daughters myself, I think that's pretty cool. You're probably an inspiration to many. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rupi.
I have to say, speaking with Trustee Wilson, amazing. To be a female and to win is amazing. But I do have 2 questions for you. What motivated you to do this? And I did go to the event, and it was spectacular. Just there was like no space to walk, and just it was so packed in there. And I felt like I didn't have enough time to go to each booth, so I just was quickly checking it out. But I'm curious, what motivated you, and how did you feel when you got your name announced?
What motivated me? I don't know. Probably like my dad a lot, like my friends and family, and then a lot of it was actually also my instructor. He was very proud, obviously, because he trained me how to do the stuff. And then when my name was announced, I didn't qualify for any medals for nationals specifically, but in provincials, when my name was announced for first place, I was shaking a little bit. I went up there and, yeah, no, it was crazy. I didn't expect it, to be honest. Yeah,
Great job. Truly amazing.
thank you.
So make sure you send our congratulations to Wyatt Rempel for that, and to one Neufeld, to another Neufeld. Well done. And if I need to hire somebody, are you still available, or are you spoken for as far as your profession is concerned?
So far, I'm spoken for.
You're spoken for. So which company is it? Who do I need to call? But thank you very much, and we have a small token of appreciation for you. It's okay, I can squeeze by. It's not a lot, but it's just for us to say thank you very much for representing our district so well and your school, and thank you for all that you do for the trades program. Appreciate that. Let the staff know that they're doing a great job training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, can't do that. I'm trying to. Okay, go for the next one.
So our second group, I'm also delighted to welcome our the girls AAA rugby team, who are provincial champions. Congratulations to them. So from one provincial champion to another, and also from the same school, right? That's fantastic. Are you going to introduce, or would you?
You did half of it.
All right.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to Rob Sloboda.
Yeah, you have to come over here, Rob.
Let's just leave the microphone on for.
Hi, I'm Rob Sloboda. I'm principal of Yale. First of all, I want to say with Gabriella, yeah, very proud, a Yale student. And then, of course, it's like deja vu. We were here last year with these provincial champions. They do, you could probably hire them as security too if you need them. But yeah, they're amazing kids. And I'm just going to want to introduce Doug Primrose, Scott Hunter, and Clay Radins, who are the coaches, who are just going to talk about the girls, and then they'll tell their story.
Sure, I'll just introduce the, oh yeah, sorry. I'll just introduce the girls quickly, and then our captain can come up and say a few words. So over here we have Sophia Germain. She played scrum half for us, and she was also part of the team last year that won the championship.
Okay,
and
double.
she is our also assistant captain on the team, and ferocious. Michaela Buick there, she just started rugby this year. She decided to come out and play, and she's a grade 11 student, and did an absolutely great job for us, and just improved throughout the year, and she was making tackles everywhere. Annika is a player also, Conan, who was here last year with us as well. She plays in the forward pack in the second row. And Jazz, she also decided to come out this year in her grade 12 year.
Good for you.
And try rugby. And
That's risky.
she had an absolutely fantastic year as well. And then Kate, she played rugby in her younger years, and then she decided to come back to it here for grade 12. And we're glad she did, because she was pretty ferocious out there and clearing people out of rucks. And our captain, Lana Duick. Lana is an amazing athlete that works extremely hard. If you go down by Yale in the evening, down at the field there, you'll see her by herself in the rain or the hot sun, setting up cones and just working. And with that work, I'm also proud to announce that just a few days ago, Lana was selected to the Commonwealth Games team to represent Canada in Trinidad and Tobago. So she's going to be off to do that to represent Canada, so it's a great achievement. But I'll let Lana come up and talk a little bit about the season. She loves public speaking, so she'll be
Well, the season started out really well in like the very few practices. We noticed that we were clicking really well with each other and just like working well together, and only got better as the season progressed. We got to go to PEI with an exchange program and play against their team, and their team came here and played against us, and we just got to experience new provinces and like rugby in other places, which was really cool. And yeah, it was just a really successful year. we had a great group of girls to work with. So it was just good last year to finish off high school with.
Perfect. There might be some questions or comments that trustees would like to make, so.
If all the other girls could come forward.
Sure, why don't you all come forward to the front there? Wonderful. So we got trustee Rowe and then Peterson. So Rowe, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Neufeld. So, little story. Last weekend, I was at Abbotsford Regional with my daughter who plays rugby as well, our grade 12 daughter, and she'd hurt her foot. And the nurse said that they were inundated with rugby players all weekend long. So I know how ferocious this sport is from the bruises they have and so on. So anyway, I just think it's great that you guys are. I have 2 boys and none of them played rugby, but 2 of my girls have. And I think it's just really cool that you guys are out there ripping it up. Thank you.
Trustee Peterson.
I think I said this last year when some of you were here. Back in WW1, I played that silly game, and I had the great pleasure of seeing your game and seeing you win. I'm going to suggest that probably it was the other team that was in the hospital. Man, the ferocity of I just cannot believe how well you tackled. Your defense was outstanding. I mean, there were just no way you were going to lose that game. I congratulate you. Well done. And thank you, coaches, for all the effort you put in, and the school on behalf of this great program.
Thank you.
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Neufeld. So again, go girl power. Gotta love it. So I actually, kudos and amazing and all those things because you're back and you've retained this record, and I'm so thrilled about that because selfishly this is also about us, just so you know. But I just 2 questions. One is for all of you and one is for the captain, but have you counted how many times your name is on that trophy?
I have not. There's 2 in a row. That's all I really saw. But I think it's only 2. We've only won it twice.
Okay, all right. And now for each of you, some of you are moving on and some of you are coming into grade 12. So I'm just hoping that you can share with us what your future in rugby might look like. Now, we already have a heads up on you, but you might want to take it further, so do share.
Next year I'm going to UBC to play rugby, and I'm studying kinesiology.
Oh, good.
Cool. Okay.
I'm just staying here and playing with the women's team under Dick Primrose again for the Abbotsford Club.
I'm attending University of Victoria and hope to play maybe like club for fun there.
Yeah, I'm taking a gap year and I'm probably playing women's league too.
I hope to play club rugby in the fall when it starts up, and then also start back with the Yale rugby team.
I'd like to look into doing some rugby over the summer. I'll definitely be playing again with Yale next year, and hopefully university I'll get into a good university team and keep going from there.
Fabulous. Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
No, just stay where you are because Trustee Rauch is your liaison trustee and he has a little small token of our appreciation. So especially to the girls that just came up and started this year, kudos to you because that's a tough thing to do, especially in grade 12. So kudos to you and the team for bringing them in and just making them part of the team. So good for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the coaches as well and the parents. Here, just a little token of appreciation for coming in, being so brave to share your story with us. Here you are. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck.
Are we going to
Thanks very
more
much.
to the team or just wait? Give it to Doug? Or not? Hey, Mike, can you give the rest of them to him so he can give it to the rest of the team?
Yeah.
Is that right? No? Oh, there isn't enough? Okay. Just maybe take.
We'll get the rest of you after then.
Okay. You will get the rest. Thank you. Thank you. We have one more public person, and then we can, no, if you'd like to stay, I think it's important that you do. So we're going to, 2023 Community Matters Award presentation. This is something that the board started a while ago, and we wanted to recognize people in our community who aren't necessarily employees or who aren't employees of our district, but community people who contribute to the well-being of students and our school culture. And so we have what we call our Community Matters Award. 2 of our trustees, Trustee Ryan Kandarajwan, are on that committee, and they're going to present Tanya Coghill with this community award. So Tanya, would you come to the front and just maybe tell us, press the red button, tell us how many years you've been volunteering in our schools, because you've been here longer than all of us.
Oh, well, don't make me that old, Corky. I started when our oldest, who just finished his 3rd year of university, was in kindergarten. So it's been 17 years.
Okay.
Yeah, a long time. It's been an extremely valuable part of my life. I get a lot of joy out of it. It's been a blessing to be able to almost feel like a staff member in the schools that I am connected in. You get to know different things than you would just being a parent. When you get involved, you reap more rewards, I think, than you even give. I started out, you know, Tyler was in kindergarten, and I got a tap on the shoulder by a lovely woman who was on the PAC at the time, and she just said, I think you should do this. And I thought, oh gosh, I have a 3-year-old, like there's no way that I can do this. And I dragged Riley along with me, and it started 17 years ago. I set out to give joy to other people by volunteering, and I said it, Riley graduated in 2022, so last year, and I said I think I got way more joy 10 times over than I could have ever given to anybody else, so it's been a real joy.
What kind of roles have you volunteered for?
Well, I've been on PAC for 16 years, I guess, and then this year I'm just a community member volunteering. I don't have any kids in the district anymore, but I've sort of been a parent liaison. I don't really know what my role is, actually. It's sort of morphed into something more than I had intended. I've had a few administrators reach out. I think I had 6 schools that I was working with at the beginning of this school year. I've whittled it down to 3. I think, you know, the 3 of them are on their way and doing really well as far as the parent group. And I've got 3 more, and then I just had another administrator reach out a couple weeks ago and said, hey, could you start in September? And I was like, oh, I didn't know if I was gonna keep going next year, but we'll see. So yeah, it's been awesome. And you know, something else that's really great is that you can see how much work and effort our staff put into everything that happens. And as a lot of parents don't realize how much happens, you know, from setting up big events. I've worked with, Tracy and Carissa. I've worked with administrators. I've worked with students. I have all the students I know, it started when my son was younger. They call me Mrs. C. And I'm giving my age away a little bit, but I feel like Richie Cunningham's mom from Happy Days. Hey, Mrs. C. I'm like, okay. But you know, it's been awesome. It's been a really cool experience. I was at South Pop today helping out with something. I was at Irene Kelleher on yesterday. It's awesome. It's a really cool experience. I would encourage anybody, kids or not in the district, to volunteer and, build into being relevant and intentional in the lives of our kids, because why not, right?
Right. Any comments from trustees? Yeah, Trustee Wilson.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very excited for you to receive this award, Tanya. My comment is actually more for the young students in this room today, the Yale students, is that parents make your world go round. So whether your parent is supporting you from the home environment, and if they decide to join volunteerism at the school, they probably did more when you were younger and less when you were in high school. But a big kudos to all the parents. And that goes out for anybody that's listening as well, that you're an example of how to do it long term, very definitely. But it is really integral, the support and the work that parents do in our district for our students. So thank you.
No problem. And you hit the nail on the head. Setting that example is so important. I come from a long line of volunteers. My grandparents served 2 terms in Africa, serving, building irrigation and helping women learn how to sew, to my parents, who I think my mom was at every hot lunch that I ever had in elementary school, handing out copious amounts of hot dogs and donuts. So we don't do that anymore. We're not allowed to give out donuts at hot lunch
Healthy
day,
food.
but I remember the hot dog and donut days. So yeah, setting that example is so important, and I'm doing that. I first started to do it for our own kids. That's why most parents get involved. But keeping that going and building that relationship with other people's kids is so incredibly rewarding.
Thank you. Trustee Rye. Microphone? It's okay.
Congratulations, Tanya. I was reading your people who had given your nominated your recommendations.
I don't even know. I
Well,
would love to know who did.
I don't even know because I don't have that here, but we saw that, and it's usually somebody gets nominated by one, maybe two. Sometimes you actually got nominated by 3 different individuals.
Oh,
So
wow.
kudos to
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
And the thing that I noted all the time here, that your motto, serve with joy, and you've been saying that a few times. So thank you very much for doing what you do for the kids, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Neufeld. Yes. Just what Trustee Rai was saying as well, we looked through all the recipients, and volunteerism is a selfless act. And just know that you are so appreciated by your peers and your families in the community. I know they're just so thankful to have you in their schools, so thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't the two of you then just show her what we got, and we'll take some pictures. Are you gonna plan to do that? So don't go too far
Okay.
after everybody leaves, because do you want a picture of everybody? Like the skills and the rugby? Yes, so stick around. We'll get you out
Chair
the
Neufeld?
door fairly quick. Yes, Trustee
Yes, we
Wilson.
normally do a group photo in.
Oh, we do?
In the horseshoe.
The nomination committee and.
Last year we did the group, but that's okay. Nominations committee, that's fine.
Okay, what does it say on there? Yeah, and by the way, just so you know, you will be added to our wall of fame here. We have all those. Yeah. So she is already? Oh, yes, actually you are already.
Yeah.
Your name is on here for life or longer. So thank you very much. We don't expect people to stick around till midnight. So if the kids have to go, but stick around so we can get some pictures of you. But thank you very much for everything you do on behalf of kids. Congratulations. Just give it a minute for people to,
Are you gonna catch them out in the hall, are you?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, out in the hall, yeah.
Good job, folks.
Do you not want trustee picture with Community Matters?
It would be good. Should we do that?
Picture for Community Matters with the winner?
Hey, all trustees, let's head out and we take a picture with Community Matters. Let's do the whole board. Oh, give us 5.
Taking a recess. All right.
Thank you for your patience. We're going to carry on with the business at hand. Education 8.1, strategic plan and budget for 2023-2024. Superintendent Godden.
Okay, so I will kick us off for what will be the almost final culminating piece of our strategic plan and budget calendar for 2023-24. What I've really enjoyed about this process is we bring this calendar up every time and tick off certain points where we are in the journey. So as you can see, after several meetings, public, internal, we've now arrived at the point of presenting this budget and updated strategic plan to the board for approval for the coming year. The final piece, of course, being our requirement to submit it to the ministry at the end of this month. So I'll not go through all of this, but I wanted to impress upon you in all of those times, all those check marks involved all of these things that you were doing in looking at where the organization was, how we're doing in terms of performance last year, gathering feedback from the public, gathering feedback from staff, engaging with students, engaging with parents, looking at our data, looking at our budget. All of these things were part of a process for the board to look broadly at the organization, broadly inside the community, and then really identifying critical things that we can do to fulfill the mission and vision that you have of a world-class, individualized, innovative education experience for each child. I just want to go back to one thing, if you could just go back. One of the ways I like to look at this is you look at the school district like a house, and that we're all in the house looking out at different windows. And we all see different things based on where the window happens to be. And it's only if we get a chance to tell each other what we have seen, what we can see, do we get a full picture of the house that we're in and the environment in which the house is located. So that's what I love about this process. Doing all of these things allowed the board to get a fuller picture of the organization, where it's going, and by extension, how you can position us for the months ahead. So again, this is just another example. This just shows that this is a cyclical process that is ongoing, and each one is connected. Obviously, we're now in the June part of it. I do want to punctuate that one of the things we don't spend a lot of time talking about is that our schools are on a similar cycle in terms of getting their budget and engaging their staff and their community and publishing their school plans that you see there in July. So there are parallel processes at work in the organization to help create some coherence for us. The public knows this, and I say this as often as I can. You set the high picture for the organization across these four areas, having to do obviously with I'll say what is our people strategy in pink on the far left, how we want to grow and learn together. Engaging opportunities speaks to how we want to work together inside the organization and engaging with parents and families. Optimized resources is really about how we allocate the oftentimes limited resources to get the best bang for kids. And of course, student success is our core business about how we're trying to create a world-class opportunities for kids. So I know this looks daunting when trustees, you're saying, the organization has 14 different goals, and that's because one of the things that you said with the strategic plan is that everybody contributes to student success. Everybody. So while on the education side of it, the student success pillar at the top, that speaks to the work going on in our schools. Again, what I love about the strategic plan is it's an all-in strategic plan. Everybody contributes. So our finance department and our facilities department and our grounds crew and our human resources department. And so while no one department or school holds 14 goals, usually it's just one or two, everybody together is represented in the goals that you see there. I want to highlight a few changes from our past year, and they're just things that came about in the consultation that I want to share. There is the language around, if you look in the strategic pillar 1, student success, we've decided to try to create some consistency around student well-being. broadly, and that well-being captures more broadly some of the things that are going on in our schools. That we were using social emotional health before. That's a part of well-being, but of course, there's physical well-being that contributes to it, and so we want to leave the door open for schools to land in well-being where they might see fit. I want to highlight in strategic pillar 2, improve the processes for the replacement of capital equipment is a new one that we've added. Again, it's around creating efficiencies to make sure that we make best use of our resources, and the rest of them are largely the same. I do want to go to strategic pillar 4 and just highlight the whole issue around health and safety of employees, because as you will see in a moment, when we look at the public engagement, that continues to ring true for us as to something that we must continue to attend to. And I would certainly want to make sure that that is highlighted, because we've been doing it for a number of years, and it continues to be a primary focus as we, I'll say, put the pandemic behind us. If you go to the next slide, it highlights some new initiatives that are included in the budget, and I'll highlight that it speaks to providing some additional resources to all of our schools, because we know the cost of materials and so on in schools has gone up, and we haven't had the opportunity to raise funding at the school level in terms of discretionary spending. So that recognizes that and creates some flexibility for our schools to be able to address that. The other addition here also relates to adding some additional administrative time to support challenges in certain parts of the district. As you know, the district is growing and is projected to continue to grow, and so we're certainly recognizing the need to ensure that we have an appropriate amount of administration time. You see also the commitment to the MYP program at Abbotsford Secondary School, and ongoing commitments around in the progressive workforce pillar around employee engagement.
Trustee Peterson has a comment or a question.
And of course, setting a budget is a big part of what trustees do. And as always, we ask, the wish list of things that our district wants is huge. And our job, of course, is to whittle down, and there's never enough money to do them all. I really do believe, given the feedback we got from our stakeholders, that we have chosen the correct ones. Most certainly there are some missing that we'd like to have budgeted, but the money simply isn't there.
Yeah. And what I would also offer is in a budget of $240 million, don't forget, this represents about $500,000. Don't forget the other $239 million that the board is allocating towards your strategy, because this is work that we've been doing for some time. And so a lot of the initiatives that we have been speaking to are addressed in terms of the people's energy in the system. How it's being allocated is a big part of it. I'll also highlight that there are initiatives from last year and the year before that are still ongoing, that are part of this story that we should not forget. I mean, the case in point is last year the board allocated some resources under the progressive workforce to support some of our Indigenous youth care workers to go back to school and finish their education. Those 3 folks that the board funded last year are back in the district now teaching. So, that's an amazing contribution to your strategy that doesn't show up here, but it's part of your strategic commitment through time. So I would just offer that to you. If you go to the next slide, this data is also a measure of one of the goals, of course, to try to increase engagement of staff, parents, and students in the strategic plan. And so while we've certainly made some gains over last year, I'd say that we have some work to do to continue to make this more visible and I'll say inviting to parents and kids about how they can give us their thoughts, because as you know, I know the trustees really appreciate and value that. So I'll kick to the next slide and I'll turn it over to Ray for this one.
I was enjoying your presentation. I thought you could just continue.
I could.
Okay, I'm just going to walk through some of the financial details that are included in the budget.
Obviously, the key foundation to any school district's budget is its student enrollment. So you get a picture of the forecast enrollment for next year. For the September enrollment, it's up almost 175 students. And you see the 3-year plan. The budget presented this evening is for the next 3 years, so that part of the board's budget requirements are that we build a sustainable budget over a longer term. So that's why you see it. We spend a lot of time in the short budget development process looking at next year's budget, but then we build that 3-year plan out to make sure it's sustainable. The same on the staffing front. You can see the current year numbers along with the forecast number for teachers and support staff and all classifications in the district for the next 3 years. So we do see, along with that increasing enrollment over a 3-year time frame, that obviously our staffing numbers will increase as well, and the budget numbers you see in a moment will reflect those staffing estimates. So our current budget assumptions, we know that this number has already moved, I think, higher than 175. So the budget numbers, however, are based on the 175 student increase. We've also made the assumption that wage increases are fully funded by the province, and that has come to fruition. The province is funding all of the unionized and non-unionized wage increases. And in the budget, there's no changes to any major changes to programs or services. We still have, in the budget, recognize a number of pressures around inflation, and we see it in schools, and the board's initiative to increase some school allocations will definitely be appreciated by schools. We see inflationary pressures, though, throughout the district in a variety of different departments. Transportation and facilities is likely one of the biggest areas where we see the impacts of inflation. The board in this budget will continue to make an allocation to capital for the 2 capital projects that are underway at Margaret Stennerson and Augustin. And we also recognize that there's environmental cost pressures, increased number of heating days, cooling days. You'll see that later in one of my reports on the sustainability and our greenhouse gas emissions. You'll see the effect of what those environmental cost pressures look like. And one of the things that we're starting to monitor is the cost of substitute employees and general recruitment challenges that we see across all classifications in the district. So this is just a quick picture of our consolidated budget. So this includes all funds for trustees. Remember, there's an operating fund, which is the main place where the actions of the district take place, so that's where most of our revenues and expenditures are. There's a special purpose fund, and there's a number of funds, I'll talk about that in a moment, that are specifically targeted to different areas, and that's in special purpose, and then the capital fund. So this is a consolidation of all of those, and you can see that for next year we're projecting, it's a balanced budget, but it's got a $540,000 deficit that is comprised of a capital fund deficit, which is having a deficit in the capital fund is allowable from the provincial perspective. So again, just an illustration of the sources of revenue and the areas of expenditure. These are very similar. I don't think on the expenditure side the percentages have changed one year to the next. So this is, we want to see things, obviously the instruction is the biggest part, but things like administrative costs, we like them, around that 3% mark. And then, facilities and maintenance is by far our next biggest area of spending. So on the revenue side, we've obviously have already said that the salaries and benefit costs have been funded by the province. We also have made an assumption that any additional classroom enhancement fund costs will be funded by the ministry. And remember, the classroom enhancement fund is a special purpose fund, and it covers the costs related to additional teachers for the implementation of the restored collective agreement language. So any costs that arise in the staffing configurations in September, we will have set the budget aside that all those costs will be fully funded by the province. Did you want to? No? Okay. Our international fees remaining unchanged for the upcoming year, and the board previously has passed some increases along in bus user fees and facility rental charges, so we'll see some small increases in revenue there. A new item in the special purpose fund is a $2.2 million Feeding Futures food program, and I've got some details of that later in this presentation and how we intend to spend that money. And on the expenditure side, with that increased enrollment, there's a budget increase of almost 12 full-time equivalent teachers, a little over 2 in the operating fund, and almost 9.4 in the classroom enhancement fund, so in special purpose funds. We made some departmental reductions in teachers and increased the number, the administration time in principals and vice principals by 6 full-time equivalents. No change to the number of education assistant or other support staff positions. So they've remained at the levels in the 22-23 budget. And I'll just, on the EA side particularly, that we didn't fill all the EA positions that we had in the budget for the current year. So our intention would be to continue to work to fill those positions in the upcoming year. And the other one is we'll continue to see surpluses in our benefit plan, so there will be another premium holiday in this school year coming up. We've had that for a number of years where the surpluses get too high in that benefit plan, so we just don't collect premiums for a couple of months. We've also, in receiving the food program money of the $2.2 million, it gives us the opportunity to reduce some of the current spending we have in that area, and so it allows us to reallocate some additional costs from our operating fund budget of just about $200,000 into the special purpose fund. So that really represents an operating budget saving of around $180,000. The school budget allocations, so that's for school discretionary spending, will increase by $10 a student. And we've done some reallocation from our facilities department. So this means doing a little bit less work in facilities in order to cover some inflationary costs we see in student transportation related to fuel and the supplies of running our bus fleet. And this is year 2 of our $500,000 contribution to those capital projects. So just a picture of our operating fund revenue. You can see revenues have increased by about $15 million. By far the biggest area is in the provincial grant number, so $226 million in operating revenues. On the expenditure side, you see the 23-24 budget numbers. We're forecasting a deficit before interfund transfers of less than $100,000, but after we apply those interfund transfers that transfer to capital, our projected deficit for the coming year is just under $1 million. And so obviously we rely on some accumulated surpluses to cover those. So this gives you a picture of the summary of that information. Accumulated surplus, if you look at the right-hand column at the bottom, it shows our accumulated surplus at the beginning of the year, so that means last July 1st. We started with a $6.4 million accumulated surplus. After we apply the $950,000 in excess spending, if you will, in 23-24, that accumulated surplus will be reduced to $5.5 million. This is just a summary of the 3-year plan that shows, you can see in the second column, the 23-24 budget column, that $950,000 deficit. And you see the next 2 years actually show surplus budgets, very small surpluses, but the increased spending is not as at the level of the increased revenues in those years going forward. So it puts us in a good position going forward for that 3-year budget plan. So this is just an illustration of our accumulated surplus over time. You can see we had it up around $12 million for a period of time in the mid-2010s, I guess. And it's dropped, and part of this drop, if you consider now, we made a $2.5 million contribution to the new school up in Eagle Mountain. We have, in these numbers, we'll have made $1.5 million contribution to the 2 additional capital projects. So those are $4 million in district resources that have gone to fund capital projects. And like I say, I think as we start to build a plan for replacement of things like capital equipment, we do need to start putting some of the surplus money aside so that we can, afford to replace home ec labs and automotive shops and things like that have some expensive equipment that, it lasts maybe 20 years, but it does have a life cycle, and we need to pay attention to that. I just want to draw your attention to the ministry budget document and a couple of things in there. There's obviously the statement 2 is similar to the consolidated statement that I showed you, and so you've got an attachment with this document in it. I just want to, you can actually probably open it on your screens if you want. There's a little bit more details in Schedule 2A and 2B around details of one more level of detail of revenue and expense in that schedule for the operating fund. One of the things I wanted to highlight for you was the special purpose funds, and there's a schedule in there starting on page 12, page 11, that shows our 15 different special purpose funds. And it shows the revenue and expense for each of those funds. They're self-balancing funds, so they do balance to zero at the end of the year. By far our biggest funds obviously are the Classroom Enhancement Fund, but that's where you'll find things like the Feeding Futures, $2.2 million. You see a number of smaller funds, Community Link, Ready, Set, Learn, Strong Starts, school-generated funds, the operating portion of AFG. It's in the next one.
Oh, in the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, the attachment for this actually is in the next agenda item.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
So when you get to that, it just provides you a little bit more detail on those individual special purpose funds and how the dollars are allocated there. So this is the current allocation of that $2.2 million for the Feeding Futures grant. You can see that most of the money is going into food programs, into breakfast programs. There is some money set aside for a coordinator for the program so that we can have staff manage the spending of this money. This is not one-year money. This is ongoing resources. And then also some resources so that schools have the ability to manage food when it arrives at the school, and who's managing the breakfast program and the lunch program and things like that. So there's some additional staff resources set aside for those programs. So we expect, once we hire someone in that coordinator role for this program to evolve, and this is just our first estimate of what it might look like, but I would expect that by Christmas, or in January, we do our amended budget, you may see a different modified version of this based on what real need might look like, and so I would expect to see that. The annual facility grant, this is a big part of our Director of Facilities budget. Obviously, this is where we do a lot of maintenance and some of the annual programs in our schools, whether it's painting or other mechanical, electrical upgrades and things like that. You see the breakdown in cost, $4.3 million allocated, and this is in addition to the money that is in the maintenance budget. But the money here is really targeted to facility improvement projects. So there are a number of risks that we always identify and contemplate when it comes to the budget. So unplanned enrollment changes is obviously the biggest one, and I think that this is a risk whether enrollment goes up or it goes down. I'm not sure which one is the biggest risk. If we were like some of our neighboring districts and had 1,000 extra students show up, that would pose a huge risk for us from a staffing perspective and from a facility perspective, because we just simply don't have the space at the moment for them. Staffing shortages continue to be a risk area for us to monitor, and just a number of other things that we've got in our risk management plan. We know that we do monitor the things like our technology security risks, and we work with the ministries to be on top of what might be coming down the road in terms of any potential future funding changes. So this just simply talks about the 5 board guiding principles and what our efforts have been to adhere to those principles, whether it is building the 3-year budget plan or looking at ensuring our strategic initiatives don't negatively impact the operations of the district. This is our effort in demonstrating compliance with the board's guiding principles.
Very well done. Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Valistuck and Superintendent Godden. Just before we start weighing in on this, this is an info item, but 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, and 8.5 is when we're going to be passing the budget. So this is just for us to deliberate. The board has been a part of this process, the new trustees, since February. So this is their first time through the cycle. And though some of us incumbents have been through it, things change from year to year, needs change, and some of our focus changes, but maybe we could have some input from trustees of how what you've learned through the process, and also some of the challenges working through our budget, especially for the first time, or maybe even because of post-COVID, it's been a different landscape. So I entertain any comments.
Happy to start with a comment. Thanks, Chair Neufeld. Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed most, I guess, is the role that the board will need to play in advocacy for districts, because money is the big constraint we all have, right? So this process that we've gone through the last few months, I've really noticed that we have to make tough choices. Yeah, so here we are at the end of the day with only some of the programs that we could move forward, and others we just couldn't because of finances. It's been a good process, though.
Thank you, Trustee Rowe. Trustee Wilson?
Thank you.
Peterson?
Chair Neufeld, I have a question for the superintendent, and then so that there's clarification broadly across the room and across our live streaming, as well as I'll have a couple comments. But on the very first page, no, I guess it's page 2, under the items listing some of the processes we've been through, it says global recommendations to the board May 30th. Could you expand on that, please?
So,
No, it wasn't for me. Okay. Phew.
So, part of this process, as I said, was about each of us engaging in a process that we're all looking out different windows at the landscape and the environments that we're in to get a better picture of where the organization is and where it might need to go. And so what we try to build out of that are a set of recommendations related to goals that we might have and or budget and new initiatives that we might have that are intended to respond to some of those things that we see outside the window. We also have a hard look at, we had a series of presentations every year as part of the cycle from September all the way through to the superintendent's report in February, which gives us a picture as to how the organization is doing, places where there are gaps, issues that we need to address. And that's some of that information that we carry forward and bring to the board to say, here's some gaps, here's some areas that we need to look at, and here's some interesting initiatives that we might be able to surface for you to consider going forward.
Thank you for that clarification.
Hey, Trustee, sorry.
No, a couple comments. Just, this is my 17th budget. And the process has changed dramatically over the years. And, we've had some really rough times, as demonstrated in the graph that was shown earlier by St. Velstuck. Some difficult decisions that had been made. This one, I think, we didn't make any significant cuts, as it were. It was still difficult in terms, as Trustee Peterson referred to, that we had a multitude of requests, and as you can see, there's very, very few that we actually tapped into and said, yes, these are must-dos, and the rest, we're gonna wait, because we don't want our surplus to deplete. And while we're not particularly pleased about having to provide operating dollars that support students in the classroom removed so that we could put bricks and mortar in place so that we then have to have operating funds to support those students. It's kind of contrary, in my opinion. So this has been a very difficult task this year as well. And I commend the outgoing superintendent and our still here, thank you, St. Velzak, and look forward to our new superintendent tackling this. I would be remiss if I didn't say an extended thank you to the retired Linda Peters, Director of Finance, and also extend appreciation to our new Assistant Secretary Treasurer, because of the work that they do with their staff and pulling this together on our behalf is significant, and I just want to say thank you. And I do want to iterate to the 3 new trustees that this has been a particularly good process, not, sometimes we hit stumbling blocks. There was a stumbling block, a couple of them, but I think that we've actually pulled together a good budget, so, which I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. Trustee Peterson.
Thank you. What I appreciated maybe more this year than other years is the amount of consultation we went through in establishing this. And one in particular, one part that I really appreciated was the district planning team, where students gave us their input. And I'm sure they're going to see themselves in this budget and in this strategic plan, especially around the wellness area, because that was a big part of our discussions with them. So, I really do appreciate the fact that we talked to a lot of people before we made our decisions.
Thank you, Trustee Peterson. Trustee Kandarajwan.
Thank you, Chair Neufeld. I have to say, as a parent of children's public school system, I was always curious of how the money was allocated when it came to budgets and the school district. I was always curious. And now, as my first term as a trustee, it's definitely been a challenging and difficult process, but I've appreciated the process. It was very thorough, and it was great to see how all of us had conversations and we got to a decision and said, this is in the best interest of what we need to do to move forward, so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Yes, go ahead, Trustee White.
Yeah, a lot of challenges before us, obviously, and not a lot of money. So we had to, make some hard decisions, and we knew we were coming up against a surplus that was dwindling, that as a percentage of our overall budget was quite small. But I think what the superintendent said earlier, it's not just a matter of the few things we added, it's the entire budget and trusting our staff and seeing the good work and, trusting the incoming superintendent to know how to spend that other, $230 million that isn't a part of, what we could even decide, because most of it's really just spoken for. And that really just highlights that it's all about the people. And that really what impressed me here is that most of the money goes to the people, and it should, because that's what this education is all about. It's about awesome people in front of our kids, guiding them, teaching them, and I have a lot of trust in what they do, and it was a pleasure to be a part of the process.
Thank you, Trustee White. Yeah, Trustee Rai? Microphone? That's okay.
What is the percentage of our total budget that goes into people? And that doesn't mean just teachers, but all staff. I think it must be in the top high 90s.
Well, it's between, 85 and 91 kind of thing. If we look at the total budget, inclusive of capital and all those pieces, if we look at the total consolidated budget, it's...
No, but operating budget.
Operating budget, yeah, it's close to 90.
Close to 90, okay. And that's why it's the people that really helped make us do this. Second thing that I wanted to say was that our surplus is going towards the lower end of what we feel what is comfortable. And I see it's good that in the next few years it's trending up. Can you let us know what would be ideal for it to trend up to, so that we are safe in anything that's happening down the road, that we are covered? It's right now sitting at about less than 2%, which is quite on the lower end, I would guess.
It will take great discipline on behalf of the board to have the surplus move up. But I'll think that when you look at, and you'll see that one of the new objectives is around how do we start replacing some of the capital equipment across the district? And most of that, I have an extensive list of school equipment that, was on a 3 or 4 year plan to replace, that was submitted in the 2019-20 budget, right before COVID. We obviously haven't gotten to any of that list. So we do need to start tackling some of that, and that is money that's outside of the existing allocations. So we do need to have some discipline around how do we allocate any surpluses that we have, and how do we start setting some resources aside for some of that capital equipment replacement. And I think it's going to take some work in the coming years to set that aside. Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. Some of the things that have changed in the landscape over the last couple of years, especially since COVID, is staffing shortages. But I think the workforce in general across all sectors has felt that, and we feel it as well. And so to fill positions and quality positions is becoming more and more difficult, and even filling some of these positions. And we only spent $500,000 on extra initiatives. And if we didn't have to give another $500,000 to capital projects, we'd have another $500,000 to do some of these extra things that we were hoping to do. But since they're taking it out of our operating and putting it into bricks and mortar, there's not much we can do. Another pressure point that I've seen rise in the last couple of years is just the number of immigrant students coming to our district. They don't just come with language barriers, they come with all kinds of unique circumstances from the countries they come. Some of them come with trauma, some of them come with all kinds of hindrances for them to even begin to learn. And so they come to our school district, and we put wraparound programs for these kids, and there's a huge pressure point in our system, but we will do it. But again, you don't see that in the numbers, but it's there because it's increasing the number of students that are coming from challenging countries, and it puts pressure on our staff and on our system to put these wraparound programs for them. As difficult as it is not to add more things, I think part of coming out of COVID too is not just the well-being of students, but the well-being of everyone. And I see it at my workplace, and I'm sure we see it in the schools, and we see it in our community as well, that not everybody has handled the circumstances of COVID as well as others, and some still have not recovered. And so we see that people have a lot less ability to cope with pressures and with difficulties, and so that translates also into our staff, the well-being of our staff. We got to make sure that we don't keep adding things to their workload, but make sure that we are able to manage their time, because every time we add a program, it adds energy from somebody in our organization to fulfill those tasks. And so as much as I would like to add some more things, and we would all like to add, I think this is the best we could do with the amount of money we had and with the pressure points that we feel. So let's move to now, unless there's more comments on this one, no? 8.2, annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2023-24. That's
Second.
Trustee Rye.
Let's approve all 3 readings.
That's to approve all 3 readings, sorry. Trustee Rye, Trustee Peterson. Voting buttons should come up. Hang on, Trustee Peterson, you got to vote? Oh, okay. Trustee Wilson moved to first reading, seconder. Trustee Rye? And second reading, mover and seconder. Trustee Kandarajwan, Trustee White. And with the third reading, someone needs to read the actual motion. Trustee Wilson, seconder. Trustee Rauch?
That the Board of Education approve having, oh no, where am I? The school district number 34 Abbotsford annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2024, specifying a total budget amount of $269,343,271 be given third reading, reconsidered, and finally passed and adopted on this 13th day of June 2023.
So we have a mover and a seconder. The voting buttons are up.
That's with appreciation.
Yeah. Though we passed all three readings today, it's been months and months and months of hard work from staff and from the board. So we'd just like to thank staff for an appreciation for their hard work. 8.6, new administrative procedures. Superintendent Godden.
So as our practice, I bring to your attention, in this case, 6 new administrative procedures that will be added to the roster. And most of them, I will say, are redundancies, because redundancy builds fluency.
No.
Take that. There you go. That's one last time. No, but these are redundancies because they are clarifications around other occupational, organizational, or legal requirements that the district has that we want to make sure our staff are aware of, and have ready access to. So case in point, the guidelines around reporting suspected cases of child abuse and neglect is captured in the Child, Family, and Community Services Act. But we want to make sure our staff are aware of it and have easy access to the expectations they have to make reports and to know how to do it really, really efficiently. Case in point also with outside agencies, large organization, and as you referenced, there are kids coming into our schools from a variety of places, and there is some really good practices that we ought to follow in working with agencies to make sure that the first day a child is in our classroom, that they are successful. And so we have to kind of make sure that we work efficiently with partners, the same around student transitions. Something as simple as you know, a student coming from Langley School District, as an example, we have to make sure that we follow some of those practices that we know will increase the likelihood that the child is successful. And so we've added some things there, and you see AP 422, 527, and 528 are really just clarifications around the limitations for our principals around signing authorities, grant applications, because there's a lot of that going on in all school districts, and we just want to make sure that people understand what those limitations are, and to, you know, when in doubt, check with the Secretary Treasurer, check with the Assistant Secretary Treasurer. So yeah, I bring those there just as for your information, that these are procedures that will be rolled out this coming year for our schools, just to ensure more clarity and more consistency in our practice.
So this is just for information, but any comments or questions from the board?
Thank you. Sorry.
That's fine. Okay.
Thank you. I am, as you know, most of these I completely agree with, but it would be remiss of me not to have a couple questions, Superintendent Godden. That's the way it rolls. The first question I have is around AP 343, which is new as of this month. I think you could imagine what a couple of my questions might be in regards to, and that I do have some concerns, and I hope that they can be addressed with some tweaks and changes, please. One of the areas that I have, I know we should say curiosity, but really for me it is really kind of a concern. I understand that through K-12 that the district provides relationships between the home life and the school life of a student, but the school is not there in the evenings nor on the weekends. This we know is crystal clear, nor are they there on breaks like 2-week breaks or the summer. And one of the, I just have to find it here, but one of the items that came to my attention, there are 5 references in here to home. And one of the, I'm just trying to find it, sorry, I should have had it up earlier. It's the first one. Maybe it's not, sorry, bear with me. It was just regarding where we don't want to see disruption to the home program, yet these are outside agencies that work with the families outside of the school life that I just described. And I would hate to see that a family would need to be told no about an outside agency. And so being that I'm the receiver and reading the information, and I know the system, I was still a little bit confused by how that was referenced, and I'm hoping that we could clear the language up before this is actually rolled out for September.
Well, I would say, you know, the intention is always, the child's at the center of this. And the intention is that we would always, school district staff, work carefully with family and family services, or family purchase services oftentimes, to support a child in our school. One of the things we just have to be careful about is that the interventions, key features of programs fit within the confines of what is appropriate for a school, and what is appropriate for a teacher or a learning services teacher to do. So it's not a no, it's that there are limitations that exist within the School Act and within the professional boundaries of a teacher to ensure that a service that the family uses at home is used in the school in such a way that is appropriate for the school. So I would say I'd certainly have a look at it to ensure that it is invitational, but I think we also want to set some boundaries, that there's some things that our school just cannot do that a parent can do at home for a whole bunch of reasons. But I take your point well. It needs to be, first of all, be invitational to say that families, we want to work with you to make sure your child is successful.
Yes, and also that families shouldn't shy away from having a program in their home that works for them in their home life. Whether we believe it's contrary to what's happening in the school, we don't want to create confusion for the child in the building.
Right.
However, that child still belongs to the family, and they still have choices. So that it would be complementary. I just think, and I appreciate that you recognize my concern, that we clear up the language so that it's welcoming and
Complementary is a good word, right?
Complimentary is a great word. May I ask my second question? Which again is on one of the APs, and that is on AP 525 draft, which was drafted in May, and it's regarding the signing authority, which I have no contention with, none at all. 528, AP 528, yes, which is in draft still. And my question there is, just under procedures, the first paragraph states that the Secretary Treasurer is the signing officer for the district, maybe perhaps primary, but not the. And the reason I raised that is because we do have other signatories in the district, including the board chair. And I would just like to see, and that is in policy, so I'd just like to see at least the primary, but not the. If we could make that requested change, perhaps even through to the Secretary Treasurer, because policy does state that we do have other signatories.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I would, this is in reference to staff.
I understand, but
Okay.
if they know that he's the primary, I actually think that gives it more strength. But he's not the only. And if it says
Granted.
the, so that was the concern I wanted to raise to the board's attention and to your Superintendent Godden as these are your purview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Trustee Roque.
Yeah, just something on student transitions. One thing that I've heard is because of the constraints, sometimes kids are having trouble getting into, say, a district program in grade 9, but have to wait till grade 10 perhaps to get in when there might be room. But the sports teams, I guess there's a policy that they can't join a sports team at the new school if they enter in grade 10, I believe, because they don't want kids moving, or what would it be, high schools soliciting
drafting people.
kids, drafting people into a sports program. So I'm just wondering if maybe we can review that at some point in the future to just sort of see if exceptions can be granted in situations where somebody's moving for an academic reason, purely academic, or for a district program and wants to be on the volleyball team, you know, like.
Yeah, and as you know, this policy doesn't contemplate that. This is typically around some of our inclusive ed kids who come with pretty complex needs, and we want to make sure they're successful. But that's another section of it that we could add in to have a look at that. So for sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, this is an info item. Let's move to 8.7, Accessible British Columbia Act. Progress report.
Right, so Bill 6 in 2021, Accessible BC Act was passed, and all public bodies, and the government issued a legal framework that all public bodies needed to ensure that you had a mechanism to identify, remove, and prevent barriers to the full and equal participation of people with disabilities in BC. Obviously, that includes school districts. There are three parts that we have to be in compliance with, and while the ministry has said, let's make sure we do this well and not just make this a compliance exercise, and so we want to make sure that you do it thoughtfully rather than quickly. There are three pieces that need to be fulfilled by the school district, and I just want to speak to them briefly. The first one is the establishment of an accessibility committee, which involves community members, it involves obviously staff and the local unions. We've started that process and reached out to them and are beginning the process of building the committee, who would be charged with the second part of the requirement, which is to build an accessibility plan. That involves looking around the entire organization, and this is a big one, as you know, we've got 50 sites, to identify places where there are potential barriers and to look at how we might ameliorate those conditions that are there and present barriers for people with disabilities. And the third one is to have a mechanism for feedback on accessibility. And while the committee would play a key role in gathering that, we just presented a budget where we shared that we have a pretty robust mechanism for gathering feedback through our portal. And so it would be our intention to use some of those tools to gather feedback from the public. But I obviously want to leave that to the committee once it's been constructed and they've got a real clear sense about what their mandate is. I will say before I turn it over for any comments or questions that this is a really important piece of legislation and one we should take quite seriously. However, I think it is also important that we recognize, in light of the very budget that we just discussed, that we have a mechanism around reviewing and prioritizing and ensuring that we can, in a timely and realistic way, deal with items that come before the committee, and by extension, the board, and I would say by extension, the ministry is the piece that I would add. And so they've extended this to school districts to do this, and you can anticipate that, in a district with some old buildings, we're going to have to do some things. I think we just have to be really thoughtful about how we provide guidance to this committee and then allow that process, whatever is created there, to come to the board in a way that reflects some of the thinking that you had to do with your strategic plan, and also the engagement you have with the ministry around supporting some of the things that will no doubt come forward before you in the months ahead. So.
Okay, info item, questions, comments? Go ahead, Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Neufeld. I just want to take the board back, for those who were here last year in June. We discussed this in a public meeting and adding a couple items in a letter to, I think he's, I can't remember, but MLA Dan Coulter, as lead on this project, we did provide a letter referencing that not everything that was a disability was listed in their the proposed legislation, and that they should include some other items. Those did not make it into the legislation. However, I was at a meeting with MLA Coulter, with our branch meeting actually just a couple weeks ago, where it is confirmed that we should not consider that a shopping list that's in the legislation, that we extend that to the areas that are not named, because it is impossible to name all those areas that are captured within our own district, and that it should be relative to the students who are in our district. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Any other comments from trustees? I have two comments. One is compliance timeline and finances. Is there going to be any, because funding, I can see this costing us, because some of our buildings are like, I mean, I do restoration work. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
And these older buildings, you don't know what you're going to find until you open it up. And so those are the two concerns I would have. And timeline, number one, and then finances.
And, you know, I want to, you can assume that there's a number of people in our community who would be valuable assets to participate in a committee like this to support the school district in making it more accessible, right? I mean, you can assume that. We want to also set them and that committee up for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
To not be frustrated if the mechanism that involves supporting some of their ideas is not there from the ministry. So we don't have that information yet. The timeline, at the last superintendent's meeting we had last month, the ministry acknowledged that they were, you know, a little bit late out of the gate and didn't want school districts to, you know, rush to try to get this done, but to actually be thoughtful about how we construct the committee. So we have some time, but I think the expectation is to have the committee up and running this fall. To be clear about what the terms of reference are, I think is the number one thing, so that when they're clear about what that is, then they will try to operate within those confines. And I think as a board, you will need to continue to engage with the ministry about how they're going to support this work. Imagine there are going to be 60 committees like this around the district, and this will be part of your capital plan that you'll have to consider, or part of how we spend some of our annual facilities grant money. So, you know, you want to set those folks up who are put their hand up in earnest to help the school district to be successful and not to be frustrated by this. So I just think some thought needs to be done about how we do that well.
So they'll need a plan on how to prioritize issues as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's under-promise and over-deliver. So even to that committee, just, I think that's probably the main thing.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, we've moved to question period. We have two periods in our agenda where we have question period. And first of all, do we have any questions from online? All the thousands of people watching, no questions, okay. The questions need to be related to agenda items, because there's other mechanisms for people to introduce different topics. So if there is anything, we have another question period at the end of the meeting, around midnight, when we get to that one. If not, we'll move, oh yes, trustee, former trustee, former chair, trustee Cindy Schaefer. No, sorry, go ahead. Oh, you have to give us your name, sorry. I know, we've changed things around here. It's. Introduce yourself and then the question related to the agenda.
Cindy Schaefer. Just was wondering, with the portal for input on the financial information, one of the slides that you had up there was percentages of input. So 48% was from parents or something, I don't recall it. And then there was staff, but then I think the third item down said, one was parents and guardians, and then one was parents and employees. So, is that parents who are employees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question.
That was simple. Oh, so she wants to be part of that committee.
You know, to be fair, Cindy, there were several of us trustees who had a similar question.
Okay, let's move on to operations 8.8. Secretary Treasurer Balistuck.
The first item is a statutory right-of-way to Fortis related to our project at Margaret Stennerson. It's a.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
Oops. It's a statutory right-of-way is an interest in land, so it requires a bylaw approval of the board. So this would, like your budget bylaw, require you to have all three readings at one meeting and then go through the bylaw process.
Move to approve all three?
So that'd be trustee Peterson who moved and trustee Rai who seconded. And what we're saying is we're waiving the right to have these three readings here today. So the voting buttons are up. Yeah, all three readings today, yes, something like that. Instead of spreading them out over three meetings in the summertime. Yeah, trustee Wilson. Trustee Rai, trustee Kandarajwan is seconded. Hang on, we're not voted yet. Let's just, I hear it, priming the pump. I get it. Okay, trustee Wilson and then seconder. Trustee Wilson, trustee Rai, okay, thank you. I'll look over. And then the third reading we actually need to read, so who would like to be the one to move it and to read it?
Nobody's voted on the second one yet.
Oh, yeah, Mike has. Is the only
Oh,
one.
yeah, there we go.
Okay,
Maybe that's slower.
so trustee White will read it, seconder. Trustee Rauch.
That's school district number
That's school district number 34, Abbotsford, property disposition bylaw number 85 be given third reading, reconsidered, and finally passed and adopted on this 13th day of June, 2023.
I like the finally. Like finally.
Well read. Yeah.
Okay. We got two voters, okay, we got Mike, yeah, we're go. One more vote, and we're good to go. Thank you, everyone. 8.12. Explain PSO.
This is the 2022 Public Sector Climate Change Accountability Report. We've submitted this report annually to the ministry. It's you know, if you get a chance to read through the report, it highlights some of the efforts we have in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions in the three key areas. Around paper is obviously one big area. Our buildings is by far the biggest area where we generate greenhouse gas, and our fleet vehicles, so our school buses and our district maintenance vehicles as well. So in order to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, if you look through the report, there are a number of initiatives that the district undertakes, from LED lighting upgrades to installing electric vehicle chargers, to boiler improvements. And so those initiatives all have the intention of reducing our costs, but two, our greenhouse gas emissions. And I'll say that since 2001, so the foresight of boards many years ago that began to do some of this work around managing their costs and their utilities and things like that. So whether it was electrical or gas costs, this district has done a lot of work, you know, in 20+ years to deal with this. So you can see on page 3, you know, the decrease over time, and you know, since that 2001 time, if you go out to the front, you'll see numerous awards from Fortis and BC Hydro that this district has won for achieving different energy targets over time. So it's been a real benefit. When this came into play in 2010, we had done a lot of work in this district already to be in a position to manage our greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at some of the charts on page number 5, you'll see one. I mean, we're the 7th lowest emitter of greenhouse gas in the province, and you know, when you look at the size of our district, and you know, you see we're surrounded by, you know, other lower mainland districts in that group, but it is something certainly to be proud of in terms of the work that the district does. And remember, if you know, all the energy savings that the facilities team has worked on for 20+ years have gone straight back into classrooms. So by reducing those costs and the millions of dollars saved over time, have simply gone back into classrooms, and I think that's what we're here to do. I'm just going to fire ahead. There's all kinds of information in there. The one thing, if on page 13, it talks about carbon offsets, so we actually do have to pay for those emissions that we make at $25 a ton. So we pay to the ministry $101,000 this year to buy our carbon offsets, and they in turn invest that money in greenhouse gas. Things on the positive side of that. So that is, as we continue to reduce our emissions, that number will drop. But it is part of the cost of doing business nowadays. So the report talks about a number of initiatives and things that happened during the course of the year, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Vallistek. I'm in the trustee mode. Any comments or questions for Secretary Treasurer? Yes, Trustee
I just
Peterson.
think credit to our maintenance folks for the great work they've done. Since we were ahead of the game for a long time, and we saw huge decreases to start with, and as we get more efficient, the decreases are smaller and smaller, but they're still doing great work. So I appreciate the work of the maintenance folks.
Well, I remember being on the board when Trustee Joanne Field championed a lot of initiatives through this, and I remember staff and going ahead of the province and ahead of the districts, and then finally the province caught up to us. And sometimes that can punish us because we spent money doing it or whatever, and didn't probably get some of the financial remuneration for that. But
yeah, I mean, the district invested a lot of money in those days. There was some funding available to do that. If you didn't do any of that, there's a lot more funding now to do it.
That's what I thought.
I think over time, the district has definitely benefited from getting out in front of this and saving a significant amount of money. There's some places, if you look in the report, you'll see that there's increases in some areas. So for example, during COVID and post-COVID, the requirement for us to ventilate our buildings differently than we did before has resulted in a significant electrical cost increase in the district. So there are some things that from an operational standpoint, maybe don't quite line up with the idea of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's around occupancy issues, and so you have to balance those things going forward.
Okay. Any comments, questions? We're good to go? All right. 8.14 proposed 8.13 Board Policy 15 Student Code of Conduct revised.
And this is just a housekeeping issue to delete reference to a policy or an administrative procedure that no longer exists.
We need a mover and a seconder, folks. Trustee Wilson, Trustee Kandarajwan. Any comments, questions, discussion? Voting buttons are up. I think we gotta vote, sorry. No, sometimes the button doesn't work 100% sometimes, so. Happens to me occasionally. 8.14, proposed public board meeting schedule for 2023-24. It's also an action item. And who's gonna propose it?
Move to approve.
That's Trustee Peterson, and who was it? Trustee Rowe, okay. Any comments, questions? I just encourage trustees to keep Tuesday nights open, even if there's not a board meeting, just so that we have an opportunity to fill that in if something does arise. Thank you.
I just think of all the agenda items, this is one that Superintendent Godden probably cares the least about.
I'll be locked in on this, trust me.
So Mike, you got to vote? Okay. All right, thank you. This brings us to there's no external, so trustee announcements. Anybody have any trustee announcements? I know graduations are coming up, and I just want to say to the folks around this table, as you make comments, make sure you encourage our staff and parents and students. And I just want to say publicly, thank you to all the staff for the hard work. Sometimes we push kids across the line. Sometimes we pull kids across the line. And it takes a lot of hard work. And so we just want to say thank you to the parents for their support. We want to also thank our staff for their work. in the last year to bring students to completion in grade 12. Our goal is to make contributing citizens to benefit the communities where they live, whether they choose to live here in Abbotsford or another community, responsible, contributing citizens. So any announcements from anybody? Yes, Rupi.
I don't think I mentioned it, but I connected with Carolyn from BCSTA, and I'm in the process of being part of the BCTSTA Child Care Working Group.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, they contacted me, so I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for representing us. Question, yeah, sorry, Trustee White.
Sure. Just I had the pleasure of visiting one of my catchment schools and one of my liaison schools, Asia, and just wanted to share like a really great experience I had with Asia. It's I kind of went into it thinking of it as a fine arts school, and I expected to have great dancing and singing, and they showed me some of that. But to really see the distinction between a fine arts school and a school of integrated arts, that was surprising to me. It was surprising that the principal didn't say, hey, we have this great dancing program and this great singing program. It was, no, how well our students do in university and how many of them get scholarships. So while other students are, memorizing the periodic table of elements, in Asia, they're doing a whole model of, the elements, and then they're making a skit about the elements, and then they're singing a song about the elements. So it just really cements just the reading and the writing and the math and the science so much more into them. So I just thought it was so impressive how they integrated the arts into everything. And I think it's just great how much this district invests in the arts, and I was blown away and very impressed by it. So,
okay,
yeah.
Excellent.
My
Thank
experience.
you very much. Yes, Trustee Wilson.
Chair Newfold, I just wanted to make Trustee White aware that former trustee Freddie Latham is in the audience, and
Yeah.
she's one of the pushes behind the Asia schools. So I saw her smirking, so I was.
Never too old to learn.
There you go. Just letting you know. Thanks.
So before we get to the conclusion of our meeting, we have question period number 2. Anything online? Nothing? Anything in the public pertaining to the agenda? If not, before we disconnect, this is our Superintendent Kevin Godden's final public board meeting. And so
Quit smiling.
I would like him to make some comments, but before he does that, some of us have thought really hard about what do you give a guy that's been here for 26 years? What do you give a person who's dedicated 12 years as superintendent and had to deal with the complexity of boards? And so we went to the archives.
Oh, you did?
We went deep into the archives and found some absolutely wonderful. So maybe you could open up this one first. You will probably recognize that. And what is it? Maybe explain.
It's a watch. It's an Abbotsford School District watch. And it's gold. We used to, right, of course, it's got the old logo on it. It's one of the things that we used to give to folks at the long-term service banquet.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so.
So you're always jealous when you're giving them away. I noticed you were drooling over them going, one day I will get one of these.
I will get one.
Yes.
Yes, the logo with the book and the
There we go.
34 and the flame.
Well, we
Forever.
also got a lapel pin for that.
Oh.
It's got the school burning that we always have there with the book. Charcuterie was a big item around here, so we got your charcuterie board.
Oh, okay.
So in the mornings when you have your cup of coffee, I want you to look long and hard at the logo and remember each one around the table.
Black and silver
Yeah,
forever.
and when
I
you
love
write
it.
letters, if we still do that, here's a coveted pen. These are things that we just don't give to anybody. In fact, we don't give it to anybody. So if you have a few comments, and then maybe I'll ask the people around the table as well to give some comments. But yeah, just any last comments?
Yeah, I'm grateful. Thank you very much. It's 26 years, but 36 in total. And those of you who are at the retirement celebration, I haven't gotten around to firing the people I need to for embarrassing me as you did. But I am grateful. It's a sign of I'll say great appreciation and a measure of the I'll say the joy that we've had working together all of this time and having fun, but also making sure that we stayed focused on kids. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I've worked with a number of boards since I've been here, and I am just super grateful that you trusted me to. We've done some really interesting, joyful, hard, challenging work over the years, but it's occurred and it's been done in a spirit of trust, relationship, and a deep sense of the responsibility we have to this community and for children. And through all the difficulties that we've had, I have never for a moment doubted the sincere care that everyone around this table has had for kids. And that's why we could always find a way. We always find a way to make good things happen, because I knew in our hearts that's why we were here, and that's what we were dedicated to, finding different ways to do it. I am super proud of where we've come in this district, and delighted to work with such a wonderful team. This is a part of the team of 9, but I've also got a team of folks here at the board office and all over our school districts who have just been so dedicated to kids, and the work has always been about that for me. And I'm just delighted to have been able to do it. And while tonight you're acknowledging and recognizing me, it has always been about us doing this work in the service of kids. It's always been, because none of us can do this alone. We do this because we can pull together and make 1 + 1 = 3. And that's how we've done it. That's how we've grown over the last few years, and I'm delighted to see that happen in the months and years ahead. So thank you so much for trusting in me and for working with me in this very noble, important, and fundamental endeavor called school that we do for kids. Thank you very much.
Okay. I know that we've made comments, and we're going to have a board dinner, but if there's anybody else that would like to share 1 or 2 things, if not, then we'll close this meeting off, and then you can say them in private. We're both John Oliver grads, and at one time we had 3 people at the board table that were John Oliver grads: Gerda Fandrich, myself, and Kevin. And so, crazy and good things can come from South Vancouver.
From jokers.
Yeah, from the jokers. So.
Despite that,
Yeah, I know we still, I don't know how we did it, but with the deficit, but yeah, right. So, yes, good. You have to use your microphone. We want to cut this down, but yes, go ahead.
I would like to start off. As a parent, I used to always wonder about your emails, like, who is Kevin Godden? I used to read them all the time, and it's been a short 8 months, but I really appreciated working with you. And the one thing I take back is I'm going to quote what Kat said last week, is it's so true. You're so consistent. It's always about the kids. So I hope you know that hopefully we're leaving it in good hands, but I love that quote. I'm going to take that forward with me, so thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, Trustee Wilson.
I forgot one item in my video message. It was really more of a question. Where is Dawson Creek?
Trustee Peterson, go ahead. Yeah.
I can appreciate Kevin for so many things, but I think what I most appreciate is the work we have done as a board, as a team, in our strategic plan. And with the focus on student success. All boards student success is, all boards believe in that. However, we put it down on paper, we're practicing it, we're holding people accountable for it, our budget is associated with it. So I really do appreciate the way you've led us in that direction.
Thank you. Trustee Rai.
Thank you, Kevin, for all your commitment. Thank you, Kevin, for being there for children, for families, for employees. You will be missed. It'll be hard well, you will be missed, let's put it that way. And thank you for your dedication. So have a great retirement, and every Tuesday, please watch us.
Yes.
We need the numbers. Yeah. No.
I have to convince Leah to join me to watch you.
And so with that, we want to close this public board meeting and call adjournment for this. We still have 1 or 2 items afterwards, but we can spend a bit of time conversing with some of these people.